Grab yourselves a seat. Again, welcome to you this morning. Particular welcome to the people who come late and weren't here for the first welcome. It's lovely to have you here with us today. It's good to be here. In the Anglican Church, as well as lots of churches like Methodist Church, Presbyterian Church, Catholic churches, we read through a different gospel, which means a story about Jesus' life, a different one every year. And this year, we are reading through the book of Mark. And Mark is a man in a hurry. He wants to let you know what he's got to tell you, and he does it quickly, and he gets to the point. And so today we are just a little way into Mark, and already we can see what is Jesus about, what is he doing. And today in particular, I think there's some really critical lessons for us, for our life, for the world we find ourselves. Sometimes you can look back 2,000 years ago and say, I don't get how that has anything to do with my life today. Today, I think this passage is particularly relevant, so I'm going to read it to you. It comes from Mark chapter 1. After Jesus left the synagogue with James and John, they went to Simon and Andrew's home. Now, Simon's mother-in-law was sick in bed with a high fever. They told Jesus about her right away. So he went to her bedside, took her by the hand and helped her sit up. Then the fever left her and she prepared a meal for them. That evening after sunset, many sick and demon-possessed people were brought to Jesus. The whole town gathered at the door to watch. So Jesus healed many people who were sick with various diseases, and he cast out many demons. But because the demons knew who he was, he did not allow them to speak. Before daybreak the next morning, Jesus got up and went out to an isolated place to pray. Later, Simon and the others went out to find him. And when they found him, they said, "Everyone's looking for you." But Jesus replied, "We must go on to other towns as well, and I'll preach to them too. That is why I came." So he travelled throughout the region of Galilee, preaching in synagogues and casting out demons. Now you might be sitting there going, I don't see how this is relevant for today. But I want to talk particularly today about these two aspects of Jesus' life. And the first one, we see Jesus is bringing hope to dark places. And he's bringing healing and love and mercy. He's healing the sick. He's casting demons out of people who are oppressed. And this is what Jesus is about. At the 9 o'clock service, we say every week these words. Jesus Christ is good news for the poor, release for the captives, recovery of sight for the blind, and liberty for those who are oppressed. This is what Jesus said about himself when he started his ministry. And here it is. Right from the word go, we can see it. He's bringing healing. He's bringing wholeness. He's bringing hope. And it gets pretty hectic. And then we see the other aspect that I think is really important. That Jesus doesn't just keep going. It's so busy. There's so many people that need helping. I need to reach them all. He goes and hides to the point where they can't find. Where are you, Jesus? And he hides and he spends time with God. And here is the reminder. If you want to be a presence of hope and love in the world where you find yourself, in your family, in your workplace, wherever you are, if you want to be that kind of transformative presence, the kind of person where people come and they say, when I spend time with them, my soul is filled, I feel good, I feel encouraged, I feel hopeful. Here is the key. How do we do it? Spend time alone with God. Someone reminded me of this verse from the book of John. It's one of the other Gospels, one of the other stories that tell of Jesus' life. And it says this, Jesus is saying, "I am the vine, you are the branches. Those who remain in me and I in them will produce much fruit. For apart from me, you can do nothing." Here's this invitation. If you want to be this transformative presence, if you want to see your own life transformed, take time out and spend it in the presence of God. Now, the tricky thing in our culture is that we are too busy. And this has crept up on us, and I don't think enough of us have stopped to think, well, what does that mean? I remember my mum telling me that my grandfather, way, way back, used to spend every evening after tea just sitting on his seat, pondering. thinking. That's all he did, just sit and ponder. We don't have time for that today because the TV is on and our phone is dinging with notifications. There's the news to read, there's people to catch up with. And one of the incredible things that happened that I think we often don't think about is the change electricity has made to our lives. In the olden days, the sun would go down and that was it. It was the end of the day. And now our lights can stay on till 2, 3 in the morning. Our screens can be reflected in our eyes. And we just keep going and going and going. And our life is busy. This week I was reminded again, I heard this quote, and it's always terrifying when you hear it. There is one thing that nobody can get more of. It doesn't matter how rich or powerful you get, you cannot get more time. And I think in our culture, the messaging that we're hearing is, you can't get more, so do more. Jam it all in, get busy, tick the boxes, you need to achieve, you need to get through it. And here, in this passage, we're seeing something different. If you want your life's work to be meaningful, do less. If you want to really make an impact and a difference in the world, stop and have this balance of doing and not doing. This pendulum, there's nothing there, there it is, a pendulum of being busy and then resting so that you know what it is to spend time on. Now this morning at 9 o'clock I made this point and I'm a little bit nervous about making it this morning, but I had such a flock of the older crew there saying to me, you have to say that. And they were looking on from the years of wisdom and experience. One of the things that has happened in our culture is that we have begun to worship children. Now the vicar over in Sumner was talking about this recently and he said my generation, because he's quite young, has turned our children into gods. And we sacrifice and do everything for them. Now I remember years ago reading about someone's story of how they spend their time in the United States. And they were talking about the amount of things they were doing for their children. They were saying that one of their children had multiple after-school activities and they just spent their whole life shuttling their kids from one thing to the next after school. And the kids were so busy. And I was thinking, thank goodness, New Zealand is not like that. But things are changing. And there's this subtle temptation to think that this is where our salvation will come from. It will come via our children. We need to worship them and get them busy doing all the things. And you'd think, we've got these children, they do all the things. They should be happy and fulfilled and achieving and confident young people. And yet the opposite is true. Our children are overwhelmed and depressed and anxious. And here Jesus is talking about something else. Don't do so much. Your salvation is not going to come through being busy. Some of the grandmas came up to me afterwards and they said they're watching what is happening with this next generation and they said the joy has gone from parenthood. And they said it doesn't just start when your kids hit primary school. They said from the moment someone finds out they're pregnant, it becomes a thing. They said it was never like that when we were young. It didn't matter where your baby slept. Talked about friends who had babies sleeping in a drawer on the floor. Who cared? Now, it's like all this time and energy needs to go into this moment. Through the pregnancy, the baby will arrive. Oh, and then there is a child. And they were just like, they're watching, they're older, they're like, it's crazy. It is crazy. What are people doing? Your children don't need that. One of them said they had 7 children. And so I didn't have time for any of that stuff. So when my child came and said, no. They said they had one priority. They were looking for a new house because they'd outgrown them. They said all they wanted was a really huge backyard because that's where the kids spent their time, in the backyard. They bought a 3-bedroom house. They had 5 boys in 1 bedroom. But it didn't matter because they spent their whole time outside in the garden enjoying creation, enjoying nature. And they said, and the kids are happy, they're healthy, they're well-adjusted people. So there's my, I'm a little bit scared to say it comment. The grandparents said, say it. This is the culture we're living in, where if only you could do more, if only you could be more busy, somehow your life is going to be purposeful and meaningful. Somehow you're going to find the answers. Somehow this is where salvation will come. But instead, there's this invitation in this passage to live with this pendulum. And to live with this knowledge. You cannot be busy in a way that is changing the world if you don't take this time to stop and spend time with God. It's a really great thinker in our world today. His name is John Mark Comer. Really interesting. He's written this book called The Ruthless Elimination of Hurry. And he makes this point in it. We were created to live in rhythm, not constant hustle. We were created to live in rhythm, not constant hustle. Our culture, we're living in this constant hustle, this constant busyness, and it's going against the grain. It's making us sad, it's making us anxious. We were created for something else, and you see it in the way the days happen. There is light and there is dark. Every day we go through this rhythm and we're trying to push it out. We're trying to prove that our life has meaning and purpose because we do more. John Mark also says this in the book, slowing down allows us to hear the still small voice of God. Sometimes I wonder if this is why our whole culture is busy. Because we don't actually want to hear what God is going to say to us. We don't want to hear the invitation of what he is calling us into. We don't want to hear the challenge of what he's saying to put down. And so it's easier just to be busy. It's easier just to try and find that meaning and ultimate purpose on our own, rather than turning to the person who loves us more than we could possibly imagine and saying, who am I? Who is it that you are calling me to be? I managed to find this fabulous interview with John Mark Comer this week because it turns out he's put out a new book, and whenever people put out new books, lots of people want to interview them. This isn't the new book, he's got another one out. Heard this great interview, and it's worth Googling, it's on YouTube. Google John Mark Comer. He's being interviewed by a guy called Kerry Newhoff. It's so profound, the interview, I just had to go back and keep listening to bits of it over and over again. There's too much in it. I didn't finish it. It's like I need to come back when I've got more time and really ponder it. But he answers this question that I have often wondered. In my role, I'm like, what is the answer to this? He's talking about how do people see true transformation in their lives so that they become this gracious, hopeful presence in the world. How do people actually see transformation? How do people acknowledge, where they're going wrong and turn the corner? And he talks about this book written by Todd and Elizabeth Hall, and it goes through peer-reviewed studies. The actual scientific studies. How do people actually experience transformation? And John Mark Comer was talking about this book, and he said at the end of the book, the authors identify 3 things. If you want to see true transformation in your life, these are the 3 things. Number 1, contemplative prayer. And this doesn't mean just reading a prayer. There we go, that was contemplative. He talks about this as spending time contemplating the nature of God. Reflecting on who God is, and that takes time. Spending time in deep contemplation. Who is God? Who is God in my life? How does God feel about me? And that's what this passage tells us. If you want to see true transformation, spend time with God. And then the 2 other things, it's really interesting. Second one, deep, long-term friends that you can be truly honest with and who are honest with you, because your friends see your shadow side. They know you, they love you. So if you have They recommend between 1 to 5 really close friends. This will help you truly transform and learning to be honest with them. And the final one, suffering. If you want to become a hopeful presence in the world, this occurs through suffering. What our culture runs from as hard as we possibly can. The last thing we ever want to happen to us is something bad. But this is how we become a presence in the world that is kind and generous. I've mentioned this a few times already, but it's been something I've been pondering, this relationship of day and night, of rest and work. And one of my favourite passages that I like to quote to people, particularly to busy priests, is this reminder of this passage. It's useless for you to work so hard from early morning until late at night, anxiously working for food to eat, for God gives rest to his loved ones. This ultimate gift is not money, it's not work, it's rest. This is a gift. I've told this story before, but it's one of my favourites. Years ago I knew someone, and he was watching lots of motivational speakers, and he was like, this incredible thing, I'm becoming far more productive. And then he said, I've started this new diet, and I'm not eating anything other than steamed vegetables, I think it was. And they were saying, it's incredible now, I only need 3 to 4 hours sleep every night. And I'm so productive, I can get so much done. And I was just like, you've just taken the two most beautiful things in the world, food and sleep, and you've taken them away and trying to sell this to me. I'm not buying it. But here it is. Rest is a gift from God. Don't despise it. Don't despise going to bed at night. Enjoy it. Revel in it. This passage is actually reworded slightly, and it's in the Anglican prayer book in night prayers. And I love this passage, and because I've done the night prayers so many times, it rings through my head. It is but lost labour that we haste to rise up early, and so late take rest and eat the bread of anxiety. For those beloved of God are given gifts even while they sleep. Here is the healing balm for an anxious world. Rest, communing with your Creator, spending time acknowledging that you can't save the world on your own, that perhaps your motivations, perhaps your priorities have become disordered, and spending time with God. Just as I close, I want to read the words of Jesus and use them as a chance for us to come into quiet contemplation with God. So I invite you now to close your eyes and hear these words. Jesus said, "Come to me, all who are weary and carrying heavy burdens, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you. Let me teach you, because I am humble and gentle at heart, and you will find rest for your souls. My yoke is easy to bear, and the burden I give you is light." God of creation, we have lost our way. We are caught up in the hustle. We are caught up in the false promise that if we stay busy, our lives will have purpose and meaning. I pray that this year you would teach us your ways. Help us to find the joy and rest. Help us to find meaning in communing with you. And give us courage to walk against the flow. When our culture beckons towards endless busyness, may we learn to say no. May we learn to respond to your call. Amen.